days before the final presidential debate here in Las Vegas, WikiLeaks claims that some unnamed state actor has cut off their internet access, which will prevent them from putting out any more of these missives that they have been leaking throughout the past couple of weeks. As we welcome you to Hour 2 now in windy Las Vegas, Nevada, I'm Martha McCallum.
I'm Bill Hemmer. How you doing?
Great.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Lovely, indeed.
Till the stand kicks up, we're good.
We're 28 floors up. We're good. International intrigue 22 days before the election. Julian Assange, a thorn in the side of the U.S. government, as well as the Clinton campaign, now apparently blocked from the internet. Now, this coming shortly after WikiLeaks released another batch of email exposing insider information from the Clinton campaign. Ed Henry leads our coverage. Ed's live in Washington now. And the latest with Julian Assange is what? Ed, good morning to you.
Well, Bill, good to see you. I mean, the grand total of John Podesta-related emails pushed out there by WikiLeaks is now well over 10,000. And you're right, overnight, a lot of intrigue about whether WikiLeaks and the website met its demise, or perhaps maybe even something happened to Julian Assange himself amid all of these revelations. You see him there. All of this adding to a swirl of intrigue as to whether or not a state actor of some kind, is it the U.S. government, is it someone else, trying to block Assange and WikiLeaks from releasing even more damaging information ahead of that debate in Las Vegas on Wednesday night. It started with this tweet from WikiLeaks that said, Julian Assange's internet link has been intentionally severed by a state party. We have activated the appropriate contingency plans. Then there were a series of very odd tweets. Some marked pre-commitment, number one. Number two, number one was about John Kerry, the Secretary of State, of course, and then it had coding underneath that as if perhaps there were documents associated with that in case something happened to Assange and or the website. We're told early this morning that Assange is apparently okay, but is the website going to be up and running soon? We just simply don't know, Bill. And who is this state actor they're talking about? Is it the U.S. government or someone else? And why do they want to stop more revelations, Bill?
Got it. What are some of the latest revelations from the Clinton campaign emails, Ed?
Well, some of the big ones overnight involve these transcripts from the Wall Street speeches that Hillary Clinton repeatedly refused to release during those primaries. Could have been extremely damaging when she was trying to fight off Bernie Sanders in that Democratic battle. Progressives concerned that she was taking all of this money from Goldman Sachs and others in order to talk behind closed doors about her coziness with Wall Street, while in public she's talking about cracking down on them. One very interesting one that we have now is where she talked about how she believed that maybe a background in Wall Street would be good for political office, saying, quote, I would like to see more successful business people run for office. And I think it's important to have people with those experiences coming into public life and bringing that perspective, as well as the success and the insulation that success gives you, could really help in a lot of our political situations right now. If you think back to the first two debates, she repeatedly beat up on Donald Trump over his quote-unquote success in business and whether or not it's a mirage and whether or not he's just all about avoiding taxes and regulations, while behind closed doors with Goldman Sachs and others, she was telling a much different story. So that's the big overall revelation, is what she was saying behind closed doors that seems to be at odds with what she's saying in public, Bill.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. Ed Henry reporting on that from Washington. There will be more today, and we wait on that. Thank you, Ed. Here's Martha.
So meanwhile, Donald Trump stepping up his attacks on the media, which he's been going after very hard. He says that they've been doing the same thing to him all along, and he doesn't like it, and it's working against him. Also, Hillary Clinton, his opponent, Trump refusing to back down, insisting that this election, he says, is rigged against him.
The election is being rigged by corrupt media pushing false allegations and outright lies in an effort to elect Hillary Clinton president. But we are going to stop it. We are not going to back down.
Trump tweeting today, can't believe these totally phony stories, 100% made up by women, many already proven false and pushed big time by press, have impact, exclamation point. Charlie Hurt joins us out here, columnist for the Washington Times. Charlie, good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Is he barking up the right tree here?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a message that has gotten him, obviously, through the primary, and it has done very well for him. People, their heads explode when he uses words like rigged, but what does it mean? When you look at the way some of these allegations have come out, such as the hot mic tape, where you have even Billy Bush himself admitting that he sat on the tape for a long time, and then it gets put out there weeks before the election, and then mysteriously, suddenly, you have all of these allegations coming out that are at the very least, disputed by Trump. It feeds into this narrative that he's been very successful with, making people think that that the system is rigged and it's rigged against them, and it's incredibly effective.
Now, we have seen his strategy. It's pretty obvious over the weekend.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think of her strategy right now? Because she's gone underground.
I think it's probably a very smart strategy for her, and I mean, she's going to show up to the debate, obviously, but it's actually kind of an interesting question to think about. Why should she show up for the debate? Bail. I mean, everything is going in the right direction.
Bail?
Everything is going in the right direction for her right now. The only thing that can happen at the debate is, in her perspective, is that Donald Trump gets footing. He has done very well in the previous debates, despite what the media coverage has been. And that last debate, he went out there, days after the hot mic tape. I mean, that must have been the most difficult thing a politician has ever had to do, and to stand out there and apologize for the tape and then move on. And then he did a very good job of moving on and prosecuting the case against Hillary Clinton. I could see the third debate being something where it actually changes the direction of things, where Donald Trump finally gets a perfect groove, where he does prosecute the case, and it'll be this stuff about it being rigged and all that kind of stuff.
But why? I mean, I think everybody gets that message, and I think it did work to his benefit in the primary to a certain extent. But, what I hear people saying when he talks about all the rigged election stuff, and I think people get the underlying sentiment that there's a lot of very left-leaning press out there, and that he's perhaps not getting a fair shake. But he's not doing anything on his side to sort of substitute that message with his positive stuff, the border, defeating ISIS, a stronger nation internally, and also in terms of how we deal with the rest of the world. Those are the things that have worked for him in the past, but he's not spending a lot of time in the media, or Twitter at least, talking about them.
I totally agree. It would be far more beneficial for him, and this is why I think that the third debate could be a really great opportunity for him, because it's going to be about issues. It's going to be about the issues that people care about and that his supporters care about. And if he can focus on those issues and just go back to them, and then let the media, let the Clinton campaign try to make it about these other things that people don't really care that much about, and keep it on the issues, I think that's where it's
my feeling was prior to debate number one, and I think that may have changed a lot of things, is that she went underground to prep, and he was still out there, and his numbers went higher. Then after that debate, they started drifting back.
Well, but I do think the trajectory is a little bit different now. I mean, she is if nothing changes between now and the election, it looks like she'll probably win, and he needs that opportunity to change that.
Do you think that they have internal polling that is making them nervous?
I don't. Obviously, they would never let on to that. But the fact that he is still within, whether it's 4 points or 7 points or 11 points, the fact that he has endured what he has endured over the past 2 weeks, and public polling shows that he is within striking distance, I think is absolutely astonishing, and it makes me think that he has a real shot.
Perhaps he could put out. He's got to have a 21-day strategy that is very specific and very focused about how to handle these last 3 weeks and how to be presidential.
Yeah.
Because frankly, that's the thing that, you know, has probably had the most damage through this process.
And it has to be exactly what you said, which is just talk about the issues, don't talk about anything
say, I'm not going to talk about that stuff anymore. I've said all I'm going to say, which works for politicians all the time.
Yeah, and then he has apologized. And then move on.
Thank you, Charlie.
Charlie, thank you very much. Glad you didn't blow over.
The White House Chief of Staff to President George H.W. Bush and author of The Quiet Man with me back now. He's in New Hampshire. I'm in Vegas. Governor, the FBI denies this, as I just stated. What does it tell you about what was going behind the scenes in this alleged quid pro quo?
But the FBI acknowledges that conversation took place. Those two things were discussed in the same conversation, virtually side by side. The FBI can say they weren't connected, but they acknowledge that it did take place. It really shows that over their course of investigating, the FBI came to the conclusion that the Clinton State Department, Mrs. Clinton, operated in a culture of quid pro quo, and they couldn't resist trying to take advantage of this commitment to quid pro quo that the Clintons always operate under. It is, in my opinion, an absolutely damning event that says the FBI understood the sleaziness that was taking place there.
There were more leaks from WikiLeaks over the weekend. Now, this is a separate story, but this is apparently one of the speeches, the comments she made in 2013 after she left Department of State. Quote, on screen now. If you're an elected member of Congress and people in your constituency were losing jobs and shutting businesses and everybody in the press is saying it's all the fault of Wall Street, you can't sit idly by and do nothing. But what you do, meaning those on Wall Street, is really important. Why would she not want that public during a Democratic primary against Bernie Sanders?
Look, there are so many things the Clintons don't want public, including the $1 million birthday gift. But they're getting away with it because the press really is trying to cover them. The headline in the New York Times just a couple of days ago was, email about Qatari offer shows thorny ethical issues Clinton Foundation faced. The Clinton Foundation didn't face thorny ethical issues. They created thorny ethical issues. And the whole thing about WikiLeaks is that the Clintons always get involved in things that will benefit them. They create entities that look goody two-shoes, but then they take full advantage of it, whether it's public office or the foundation.
I'm trying to get a sense, Governor, about the effect or impact that WikiLeaks are having on voters and how they read them and interpret them. Do you have a sense of that yet or not?
Well, what I was trying to communicate is they haven't had any impact because most of the press is protecting them. At some point, though, even the New York Times is going to have to say, if we're ethical journalists, we've got to start putting this out. But so far, Bill, they haven't.
And you and others would argue that she is a different person in private than she is in public. But isn't that the dirty game of politics anyway, Governor?
Look, it's not so much that they're different in private versus public. It's that they are unethical in private and then trying to pretend they're not in public.
John Sununu, thank you, Governor, from New Hampshire today. 20 minutes past the hour now.
So some disturbing new dash cam video of a police officer targeted in his squad car. The gunman was caught on camera just moments before he opened fire. Look at that stunning, awful video from the dash cam. Plus, we have this for you, counting down to the final debate. Can you believe it? After all these months and that very first debate with the big crowd on stage in Cleveland, here we are at the end of the road. Right here at the end of the Strip in Las Vegas. Donald Trump says the fix is in against him. He is lashing out at the media. Is that a wise move? When we come back.
Hillary is running for president in what looks like a rigged election. The election is being rigged by corrupt media pushing completely false allegations.
We have a Fox News alert now. Some shocking new dash cam video out of Fairbanks, Alaska. A gunman targeting a police officer while the cop was in his squad car. That car pulling up to investigate a report of shots fired. Seconds later, you can see the suspect drawing his gun right before he opens fire and then speeds off in the patrol car before ditching it later. Police still searching for the suspect. Meanwhile, the sergeant expected to live and reportedly is in stable condition as of this morning.
So this weekend, Donald Trump really ratcheted up his attacks against the media. He's accusing the press of being in cahoots, basically, with the Clinton campaign. Howard Kurtz, Fox News media analyst and the host of Media Buzz, has been looking into whether or not those charges are accurate. Good morning, Howie. Good to have you with us this morning. What do you know?
Good morning out in Vegas, Martha. Well, as news outlets have reported on one woman after another accusing Donald Trump of sexual misconduct, the Republican nominee has hit back hard, calling the women liars and denouncing the press as their willing enablers.
The WikiLeaks emails show that the Clintons and the corporate media are one and the same. They collaborate and they conspire together. This Washington establishment will stop at nothing to stop all of us. And you're going to see that.
So is this a classic case of media bias? There's no evidence that the New York Times, the Washington Post, Palm Beach Post, and People magazine have coordinated these stories with each other or with the Clinton campaign. There's no evidence, as Trump says, that New York Times reporters are corporate lobbyists for Carlos Slim. He's the Mexican billionaire who owns a large chunk of Times stock and has nothing to do with newsroom decisions. There is evidence that the media are going wall to wall with these questions about Trump and women, virtually to the exclusion of everything else. And it's fair to question whether the timing of all these women going public in the last month of the campaign, some after as long as 35 years, is suspicious. There is evidence that the media have given short shrift to the almost daily and sometimes damaging disclosures by WikiLeaks of the hacked emails from the Clinton campaign. So given the negative tone toward Trump since the conventions, I can't say the coverage has been balanced. But I also can't say that Trump is right when he claims this is a coordinated campaign of character assassination against him. And one last point, Martha. Trump keeps fueling the story by talking about his accusers and denouncing them and the press day after day.
Yeah, great points, Howie. On that point, he really could, at some point, say, these women have their claims. I say that they are false. We can litigate that in the future, but right now we're in the middle of a political campaign that, there are more important things to the American people, and I'm not going to talk about that anymore. We've seen a lot of politicians do that over time to the press. Say, I've said what I'm going to say on that, and move on. He has not chosen that route.
Yeah, because that's not Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump, as we've seen throughout this campaign, feels the need to hit back when he is accused or attacked. And one can understand him wanting to defend himself against these allegations. At the same time, he's taking away attention from his core message on the economy, on taxes, on terrorism. And while I think this riles up his base and all the talk about a rigged election, the media are helping to bring about a rigged election, certainly energizes his base. I don't quite understand how this brings any additional votes to his column as he tries to close something of a gap with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, great point. And I think that's the most important point, perhaps, for him and his campaign at this point. Howie, thank you very much. That whole question of adding people who maybe drifted away. And the base who he's talking to when he talks about these rigged elections, they're already with him and they're not going anywhere. But in terms of getting back some of those independents, some of those women voters in the suburbs, hasn't been a whole lot of effort towards that in the last few days.
Do you put it all on red or all on black this week? What do you do? We're going to have to brush up on our betting skills.
You're going to show me how to play blackjack.
I
like
to
15, right?
Well,
hit me.
Yeah, you go to 16 and you stop.
16?
Yeah, $20 here, $20 there. Then you walk away winning and you feel good about being in Las Vegas.
Does not happen.
I mean, it's strategy. It works.
The house always wins.
Right on.
It's rigged.
We are getting ready for a final showdown. What is Trump doing to prepare for the third and final debate? We'll talk to the Trump team in a moment. Live next, right here.
And Donald Trump stepping up his attacks on Paul Ryan, going after him all the time on Twitter. So is that a good strategy, or should he stick to Hillary Clinton and what he would do as president? Next.
I'm just tired of non-support, and I don't really want his support. I don't want his support. I don't care about his support. What I want to do is I want to win for the people. I wouldn't want to be in a foxhole with a lot of these people. That I can tell you.
But McCain's a brave man.
Including Ryan.
He's a brave man.
By the way, including Ryan, especially
I got
Ryan.
that.
at that.
Oh.
Beautiful. Oh, it's moving.
we hung the moon for you, McCallum.
The moon bounces around in Las Vegas. If you follow it, you can sing along. Good morning. All right. So as we count down in Las Vegas here this morning, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton set to square off one last time before the last election. But instead of focusing on her, Donald Trump has really spent most of his time going after the media, going after Paul Ryan on Twitter in particular. Here's some of what he has been saying. The Democrats have a corrupt political machine pushing crooked Hillary Clinton. We have Paul Ryan, always fighting the Republican nominee. And this, Paul Ryan, a man who doesn't know how to win, including failed run 4 years ago, referring to the Mitt Romney campaign, must start focusing on the budget, military, vets, etc. AJ Delgado is senior advisor to the Trump-Pence campaign, and she joins us now. AJ, good morning. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Why is he wasting so much time going back and forth with Paul Ryan?
He's not wasting any time at all. Mr. Trump is spending the vast majority of his time traveling across the country, speaking about the real issues, engaging with the American public. It's unfortunately Paul Ryan who's spending time criticizing indirectly and directly Mr. Trump rather than focusing on preventing Hillary Clinton, as any good and proper conservative would, or any good and proper American patriot should try to do this election season. He's focused on trying to distance himself from Donald Trump, which will only harm Paul Ryan rather than on defeating Hillary Clinton. It's a shame.
Could be. We'll see. You know, in terms of Paul Ryan, it was really the video that seemed to be the tipping point for him in terms of his ability to support Mr. Trump. Was there any effort from Donald Trump to reach out to Paul Ryan and say, look, you know, let's have a phone conversation. I'd like to talk to you about this. I want to keep your support. Did that ever happen?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that as to whether there was, but it would be unfortunate if a tape from 11 years ago where Mr. Trump spoke using hyperbole would be what dictates Paul Ryan's view on this election, which will dictate really the future of the country, whether that could sway his position on supporting Donald Trump or not. You know, I should point out Paul Ryan hasn't formally revoked his endorsement, and I do applaud that, but the fact that he's not willing to campaign with Mr. Trump against Hillary Clinton, despite what we've seen in WikiLeaks, despite what we know about her record and her disastrous plans for this country, it will come back to haunt Paul Ryan. He's somebody who's popular in Wisconsin, but not popular nationwide. And should he ever try to push legislation or aspire to higher national office once again, the Trump supporters will remember this. So I don't think this will work out well for Paul Ryan if he continues to try to distance himself.
You know, it seems that, though, when Mr. Trump gets sort of into this spiral of going after people on Twitter, it's very distracting to the issues of his campaign. Is there sort of a 21-day effort underway to turn this thing around? Because the polls are not looking great, and judging from everything that his campaign is saying about how rigged it is, it does give you the feeling that they're pretty concerned, too.
Well, what you call a spiral, I call a man simply defending himself against false smears, just as any person would do in that position.
But so I'm just pointing out that let me just clarify myself then. I'm merely pointing out that when those episodes happen and continue, his numbers don't go up. And when he stays away from that stuff and stays focused on things like the border, ISIS, improving our position in the world, making America great again, that's when his numbers tend to get better.
Right, when he tries to stay focused on that, and the media, you know, with the exception of Fox News, which has been fairly fair to him, doesn't allow him to stay focused on the issues, continues to try to distract the American public with these false, scandalous, ridiculous allegations. So he does want to get back to the issues. He is focused on the issues. He talks about them every day to thousands of Americans in public, in person, on the campaign trail. And we'll see that again at the debate. He's won the last two debates. We won the VP debate because when Donald Trump talks about the issues, the American public says, that's our guy, that's our champion. So we'll see that again on Wednesday.
All right, let's just take a look at one more of these tweets that he put out, because there have been a lot of them in the past 24, 48 hours. He says, I can't believe these totally funny stories, phony stories, not funny, phony, 100% made up by women, many already proven false and pushed big time by the press, have impact. So he's acknowledging the fact that these women coming out one after the other, pretty much at least one a day, have damaged him.
Well, absolutely. I don't think anybody would dispute that. When you have the media pushing it 24/7, of course it will make a dent. But you also have a smart, informed American public who, in the past 24, 48 hours, has looked at all the information that has come out and said, whoa, these stories are bogus. And that's why we've seen even elected officials who initially said, I can't support Donald Trump when the tape came out or one or two of these stories, now backtracking and saying, whoa, I spoke too soon. I do support Donald Trump. The American public is doing that as well. So we've had a little bit of a rough few days, just as anybody would, with this media onslaught of fake, false, horrifically malicious stories. But now we're seeing the American public bounce back and say, uh-oh, wait, the facts show these stories were bogus.
All right, we will see. AJ Delgado, thank you very much. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Miss Bill Clinton's sexual assault allegations, but are quick to jump on Donald Trump. Marianne Marsh, former senior advisor to Secretary John Kerry, and Kristen Soltis-Anderson, Washington Examiner columnist, Republican pollster, and author of the book, The Selfie Vote. Ladies, good day to both of you, and looking forward to seeing you both very soon in person. Kristen, what did you think of Tim Kaine's answer there, his response?
I feel like both sides are really caught up in this bizarre double standard on this issue. You had the Clinton campaign earlier this campaign cycle tweet that all victims of sexual assault have a right to be believed when they come forward. And of course, the Trump campaign, right on the eve of the last debate, was very eager to tweet out that means every. Kellyanne Conway, campaign manager for Trump, tweeted every is the operative word. But of course, that quickly kind of fell apart for them. In both sides, you have what they're saying, this is decades old, discredited allegations. But then they're claiming that the other side's allegations are completely right. So the way voters view this issue is entirely based on the way they already viewed the candidates. If you like Hillary Clinton, you tend to trust her and Bill, and you tend to dislike Donald Trump and think he's in the wrong. And for Trump supporters, it goes the other way around.
Let me just show you some of the polling, Marianne. I want you to answer this, okay? Because is Donald Trump's treatment of women a legitimate issue? 55% say yes. When asked the same question about Bill Clinton, only 30% say yes. So the question is whether or not Democrats are hypocritical on the issue now in 2016. Marianne, go.
I think voters know that Bill Clinton isn't on the ballot. I mean, that's the issue here. And in any campaign, the most effective weapon is using a candidate's own words against them and being held accountable by voters. That's how a democracy works. And that's what's going on here. Voters understand this. It's Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. And so when they look at Donald Trump throughout the primary, now the general, then this tape comes out, has said many things about many people, including women. And then women come forward and said, oh, by the way, what Donald Trump said and said he did is actually true. So that's the debate, and voters are rendering their decisions in polls.
See a little hypocrisy, Marianne?
In this case, no. Again, because what's before the voters is Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, not Bill Clinton. That's the difference here, as it should be.
But Bill,
Kristen, is that acceptable, or do you see when Trump stays on the issues that he is more effective?
Well, when Donald Trump stays on the issues, he's absolutely more effective. In that same ABC poll, when you ask voters, who do you trust more on the issue of the economy, on immigration, on issues like terrorism, he actually comes very close to Hillary Clinton. They're essentially tied. He does better on those issue questions than he does on the question of who would you vote for to be president. So when he's talking about those things, that's the best ground for him to be on. But to this question of whether it's, Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton on the ballot, in that same ABC poll, about a third of voters say that Hillary Clinton's actions in potentially silencing some of these folks who have come out with allegations about Bill is germane because she is on the ballot. And where this could have the most impact is with millennial women who have very different attitudes than say, other generations about whether or not you should believe or silence these victims.
Yeah, I think we've got a haboob rolling through Las Vegas. I mean, this is something else out here. Marianne, wrap it up quickly.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I think the reality here is that what women understand is they don't want to be held accountable for their husbands or other people's actions. Everyone should be measured and held accountable for their own words and deeds. Donald Trump's being held accountable by voters for his words and deeds. Hillary Clinton is being held accountable for her words and deeds, not her husband's or anybody else's. And I think women understand that better than anybody else in this election. And I think you see that in the polling. You'll see it November 8th.
Thank you, ladies. Kristen Soltis-Anderson and
Bill.
Marianne Marsh.
Hold
Thanks
on
to
there.
both of you.
Hold on there.
We were trying.
All right. We're hanging up. So how fair has the media coverage been of this 2016 race? Both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are dealing with their own sets of controversies right now, but Republican vice presidential nominee Governor Mike Pence says journalists are quick to play up Trump's troubles, while he says at the same time willfully ignoring the evidence of wrongdoing by Hillary Clinton. Here's Mike Pence.
Once again, here we are in an election of such enormous magnitude in the life of this nation. And once again, the media is piling on with unsubstantiated claims as the headlines, while they ignore an avalanche of hard evidence about corruption, pay-to-play, political favoritism emanating out of Hillary Clinton's years as Secretary of State.
Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard and a Fox News contributor. Steve, hello to you this morning. Is Mike Pence right, do you think?
Well, I think he's half right. I mean, I certainly think it's the case that Donald Trump has been subject to much more scrutiny and much tougher scrutiny from the mainstream media than Hillary Clinton has, and that Hillary Clinton's the revelations in WikiLeaks, I would argue the revelations in her email controversy going back even further, haven't gotten the kind of attention that they ought to have. But it's not accurate to say that those things haven't been covered. They may not have been covered as much as I might think they ought to, or Mike Pence might think they ought to, or in the manner that we think they ought to, but it doesn't mean that they've been ignored.
Let's get to a couple of these. This is one of the recent emergences of the WikiLeaks emails for John Podesta. And this one raises some interesting questions that we've talked about in the past. He says, quote, think we should hold emails to and from POTUS. That's the heart of the executive privilege. We can get them to ask for that. They may not care, but it seems like they will. And I want to point out this is March 4th, 2015, after Congress had asked and subpoenaed all of the Hillary Clinton emails. How significant do you think that one is, Steve?
Well, look, I think it's significant in that it's part of a pattern that suggests that the Clinton team was not forthcoming when dealing with investigators and dealing with the Benghazi Committee and dealing with others, FOIA information officers, in providing their emails. I mean, Hillary Clinton said from the outset that she wanted to be transparent, that she wanted to provide all this. I think most of us thought that that was baloney at the time she said it. And here we have evidence that, in fact, they were clearly handpicking what emails they would make public, what emails they would withhold, and doing so for political purposes.
But, you know, in terms of the president and whether or not he was sending emails back and forth to that server, he claimed to not have any knowledge that she was using a private server. And a lot of people out there have thought for a long time that one of the reasons we didn't see some of these was because they may have been going directly to the president.
Yeah, Andy McCarthy at National Review Online makes a very good case that's one of the reasons we didn't see a Hillary Clinton prosecution here, and I think it's a pretty persuasive case. What the White House would say is, look, the president, just because he was corresponding via email with Hillary Clinton on a non-governmental email doesn't necessarily mean that he knew it was an unsecured private server. I think the follow-up question to that would be, if the president didn't know that, was he just communicating with the Secretary of State assuming that his communications were secure? And if he did, how careless is that by the President of the United States?
Yeah, good point. I want to get your thoughts on one other thing, because we've had a lot to deal with, and the question of the FBI potentially agreeing to remove a classification on a document in return for getting more overseas slots, as they call them, from the State Department. They've said that document was never changed and that it was not a quid pro quo. What's your read on it, Steve?
Well, certainly somebody at the FBI thought it was a quid pro quo. That is, the quid pro quo language comes from an FBI official who's responsible for classification. Here's basically what happened. You had Patrick Kennedy, who's a senior State Department official who was working on Hillary Clinton's emails, had ignored calls from the International Operations Division of the FBI seeking these additional overseas slots for months, according to these FBI interview summaries. Kennedy, when he figured out that he needed this favor from the FBI, that he wanted to change these classifications, reached out not to the people who handle classifications, but to the people who had come to him requesting these additional slots. And there was some discussion that there would be an exchange. It sounds like the exchange didn't happen. A senior FBI official knocked it down.
Yeah. All right. Steve, thank you as always. Good to see you.
Thanks, Martha.
Fox News alert moments ago. You heard it from Catherine Herridge, the FBI releasing a set of documents believed to be connected to the investigation to Hillary Clinton's server. Some Republicans believe that those documents show discussions of a quid pro quo between senior State Department official Patrick Kennedy and the FBI. Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano with me now. And Judge, good morning to you.
Morning, Bill.
Essentially, the allegation is this. If you go ahead and change the classification of certain emails, we could provide jobs for people who might want them down the road overseas. The FBI has denied this. Catherine Herridge 20 minutes ago came out with new information. Where does this story at the moment stand, Judge?
At the moment, the story stands that there is evidence, strong evidence to believe that Mrs. Clinton's, one of her senior aides from the State Department, Patrick Kennedy, offered a bribe to an FBI agent or a group of FBI agents to change the classified markings on documents after they had been subpoenaed and after they had been surrendered. And in return for that change, offered or suggested the availability, these bribe offers are never that precise, they're not in writing, but offered the availability of cushy overseas assignments for FBI agents. Mr. Kennedy has denied this emphatically. The FBI's own records are ambiguous as to whether or not he actually said this. A 302, an FBI memorandum written by an FBI agent, says he offered it and we rejected it. Some of the emails now say he never even offered it. But look, something like this, I've never seen this in my career, Bill, where an effort is made to change a document after it is evidence in a criminal prosecution. That's obstruction of justice. That's tampering with evidence. That's offering a bribe. Why wasn't somebody charged with these crimes by the FBI? Instead, we learn about this.
So, Judge, just we're clear on this. The FBI says no one was given anything in return. Is it a crime to merely suggest the possibility?
Of course it is. It's the offer of a bribe. It's an attempted bribe. It's an attempt to alter evidence. Look, there are often intra-agency discussions about whether a document should be marked secret or top secret. These happen every day because the lines between secret and top secret can be vague. And you may want to reduce the marking so that more people who need to see it can see it. But you can't do this after it's been subpoenaed and after it's evidence in a case. That's tampering with evidence, and that's what it appears Mr. Kennedy attempted to do.
All right, one last point here. Jason Chaffetz said this over the weekend on screen for your viewers, quoting, in return for altering the classification, the possibility of additional slots for the FBI missions overseas was discussed, end quote. But the mere discussion of that is what you find offensive. Last word, Judge.
The mere discussion of it is itself a crime. It is a crime to bribe someone. It is a crime to offer to bribe someone. This was at best a bribe and at worst an offer to bribe.
Thank you, sir. Andrew Napolitano back in New York. Thanks. Martha has more now.
All right. So joining us for more on this, David Goodfriend, former Deputy Secretary to President Bill Clinton, and he's a Hillary Clinton supporter. David, good morning to you. Good to have you with us today.
Morning. Thank you.
You just listened to Judge Napolitano. Obviously, those are very serious charges. Your reaction?
Yes. Well, my first reaction is, as a lawyer, I'd like to actually see the underlying communications that Chairman Chaffetz has used to reach this conclusion. Most of what we have now, and I apologize because I believe they just became released. Is that right? They released while I've been in the chair here? I don't know. But if I were to look at them, I'd want to substantiate what the chairman of that committee has said. What we've got so far is his opinion. Now, I think it's pretty transparent when Chairman Chaffetz of Utah withdrew his support for Donald Trump. He was sending a shot across the bow of the Republican Party's presidential nominee. And what I believe, now taking off my lawyer hat and thinking about this politically, I believe that Chairman Chaffetz is trying to kind of make it up to Donald Trump and the Republican Party somehow by bringing back an issue that the FBI put to rest when Comey testified. I mean, I think this is kind of an old saw. But he did withdraw his support from Donald Trump, and now I think he's trying to balance that off.
But this is all coming from new information that is coming out.
No, I don't believe it is new. He had the data. He had the information and the transcripts for many, many, many months.
But in terms of the potential offer to remove the classified marking from these documents after they were submitted into evidence, which Judge Napolitano says is just unprecedented, and even the suggestion of doing that, this is coming from Patrick Kennedy, is a bribe, even to suggest that you would trade a change in classification for some slots overseas. So obviously that would be something as a lawyer and as an American citizen that you would be very concerned about, correct?
Well, as an American citizen, I'm way more concerned about Russia hacking into our electoral systems and Donald Trump seeming to have no trouble with that. That really bothers me as an American. But what we have here is a little bit more political in nature, because what Judge Napolitano told you is accurate if the underlying emails essentially say that. But we don't have that. What we have is Chairman Chaffetz, who just withdrew his support from Donald Trump, assuming that that is the conclusion to be reached here. I would like to see the underlying documents myself and reach that conclusion. He's had those emails and had that evidence. If he says it's real, he's had it for months. Why now, Chairman Chaffetz, after you've withdrawn your support from Donald Trump?
Why now is a question that we can ask about pretty much every subject that is going around on both sides of this election, right? I mean, I think the answer to why now is pretty clear on both sides, but it doesn't completely undercut the actual substance of the story. And it involves Patrick Kennedy, who, we could just remind people was the person who ran the Benghazi Accountability Review at the State Department and didn't bother to interview Hillary Clinton and ask her questions about it. So it does raise issues about his credibility.
It goes into the sort of larger narrative that I think we're hearing from the Republican Party as the gap between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton increases, as her lead increases. We're hearing more and more things bashing the system. The election is rigged. The FBI is in cahoots. These are all crazy kind of conspiracy theories coming out as the leading candidate is losing more and more and more. So this fits into that narrative, and I think there's nothing different, frankly, assaulting the FBI or assaulting
I think people have had some substantial questions about the way the FBI has handled this case for months and months that are not even directly really related to the election, but more to people's concerns about making sure that everybody is operating in a purely unbiased way at the FBI, which is a pretty serious thing.
And I would love to see the Republicans in Congress. I'd love to see Republicans in Congress open a hearing into Russia hacking into our electoral system in the greatest democracy on earth, being attacked by Russian thugs. That I'd love to hear the Republicans in Congress take a serious look at. That would be very helpful to the American people right now.
All right, David Goodfriend, thank you very much. Good to see you this morning.
Thank you.
Some people wonder about October surprises. Maybe this is a little bit a part of that, huh?
Yep.
How's the hurricane?
We're just barely hanging on.
Oh, wow. New polling showing where Donald Trump needs to make up ground.
We are back live from Las Vegas as Donald Trump is pushing back as new polls show him losing support among women. Hillary Clinton holds a 20-point lead among women voters. This is from the latest NBC News poll, which I would point out also has the biggest gap between Trump and Clinton, with her favorable to her of all of the polls that are out there right now. So meanwhile, Donald Trump has a much smaller 3-point lead among men, 48 to 45. That number was higher for him in the past as well. So he tweeted this over the weekend. Polls are close, but can you believe I lost large numbers of women voters based on made-up events that never happened? He writes, media rigging election, ! All right, let's welcome Lisa Booth, president and founder of High Noon Strategies and a contributor to the Washington Examiner, and Emily Tish Sussman is campaign director at the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Ladies, welcome. Good to have both of you with us. So, Lisa, let me go to you first on this, because obviously Donald Trump has trouble with women voters based on all of these polls, and the stories that we've seen over the past 10 days have certainly not helped that.
Well, that's true. I mean, there are some conflicting data points out there. ABC Washington Post put out a poll that actually showed Hillary Clinton's support among women slipping from 18 to 8%. But also showed that the race tightening with men, which is not good for Donald Trump because he has been leading with men throughout this general election. And look, I don't blame Donald Trump for being frustrated with the media's coverage. You look at Newsbusters and they show that ABC, CBS, and NBC have devoted over 200 minutes to the leaked audio tapes, but only 24 minutes to information regarding the newly released WikiLeaks information. So I see the frustration there. But the problem for Donald Trump is he keeps wanting to relitigate the past, relitigate the audio tapes, relitigate these women stepping forward, and that's not good for his campaign. What he needs to do is move forward to the issues and to lay out the prosecution against the Hillary Clinton and her campaign.
I mean, this has been a major theme all morning. You know, the question about why he keeps digging in on this issue when just politically, you know, if you look at political science class, they're going to tell you, you know, it's time for him to sort of say, that's all I'm going to say about that and move on. Emily,
right.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it goes to the core of who he is, and that's what we're trying to figure out right now, is who would actually govern this country the best, who has the temperament to be president, who has the judgment to be president. This is hardly the most difficult and the highest pressure kind of question that he would have to face as president of the United States. So if he can't even let's take his word for it. Let's say that all of these dozens of women coming forward are not being 100% truthful. He buckles under this little pressure from people that don't really threaten him. So I think that's what women are seeing. I think it's why he's starting to drop in the polls so hugely. And it goes to the base of the allegation.
You know, as Charlie Hurt was pointing out before, you know, think about how difficult it must have been for him to walk out on that debate stage for debate number 2, having just had that video hit him, and he ended up having a stronger debate performance that he had the first time around. So it may be that having all these slings and arrows coming at him will strengthen him as he heads into this third debate. But I think, you know, every analyst we've spoken to across the board says a similar thing to what Lisa just said, which is that he needs to get off of this subject. He needs to move on to other stuff. Let's take a look at the polls with women. Let's take a look at the polls with women. Well, Bill Clinton did it. There's plenty of people who've done it before, so, you know, there's a lot of record to go on this. So here's Hillary Clinton at 50% with women in October, and Donald Trump at 42% with women in that same month. I mean, there's also, you know, the issues that people have to grapple with, Lisa, about the WikiLeaks revelations and what they show us about the deep ties between the Clinton campaign and the media, the deep ties between donors and the Clinton campaign, her relationship with Wall Street and how she constantly, you know, sort of buttressed them in the speeches that she gave. That has not gotten the kind of traction that this other story has.
Well, and it should. And to Emily's point, we should be looking at the judgment in the way that either of these candidates would lead the country. And that's why we should be looking at this WikiLeaks information. What we have found out is the fact there has been collusion with the State Department, with the Department of Justice, and the Hillary campaign. The fact that the media has been protecting Hillary Clinton. They have given Hillary Clinton and her campaign veto proof of quotes that are being used in stories. The fact that NBC sat on the audio and wanted to release the information and the audio just before the debate to rig the system. The system is rigged in Hillary Clinton's favor. The fact that we know that Hillary Clinton and her campaign deleted tens of thousands of emails using software to purposely delete information so forensic evidence could never recover it. So the fact that the Clinton campaign wanted to focus group how they could tie the email scandal to Benghazi to try to lay it at the Republican Party's feet as some sort of conspiracy. So the system is corrupt. We should look at the judgment of Hillary Clinton. She has no business being commander-in-chief.
Look, I think this is really unfortunate that we're going to have to play into Donald Trump's conspiracy theories to say that everything is rigged. If he's not winning, those are not facts. And if he's not winning, then it must be a conspiracy. Look, we're on the media right now. Are we giving conspiracy to it? Look, that's not. You can't say that just because he's not winning, then the entire system is rigged.
I never said that. You're making up words. You're putting words in my mouth. I absolutely never said that.
Did you not just say that the media is rigged, that it is a big conspiracy? It is not.
I never said it just because he's not winning.
There's a corrupt system.
You know, I think. Hold on, guys. I think that people do look at the system, the political system in this country, which granted is probably better than what you'll find anywhere else in the world, and feel that there is a slant in the media against conservative candidates. And I think, you know, we'll see how they feel about that when they go to the polls. Emily, thank you very much. Lisa Booth, thanks to you as well. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Martha.
Quickly got an alert right now. The FBI releasing more of this information. Catherine Herridge is on it right after this. Stay tuned. First, though, we are 2 days until the final debate in Las Vegas. And the Trump team doubling down on accusations of a rigged election, saying the media is working hand in hand with the Clinton campaign. That was a big message from over the weekend from Trump Tower. Good morning, everybody. As you can tell, we are not in Studio J. We are live at the Strip. I'm Bill Hemmer, MGM Grand, live in Las Vegas as we count down to the main event on Wednesday night, Trump versus Clinton, round 3. What's happening?
Pretty cool backdrop we brought in, right?
Yes.
No, it's the real deal. You know, they always say that the House rigs it, right? The House always wins in Las Vegas. So that's part of Donald Trump's theme at this stage of the election. As